All right, now that we have some posted transactions in the file, we're going to go back and review the reports to make sure that we see what or understand what we're looking at now. So the first report that we're going to go look at is we're going to go look at the estimate versus actual summary. Okay, now notice, woohoo, we have estimated costs and now we have some actual costs in here, right? So those actual costs have been imported in. And if I double click on it, what's generating that cost is that credit card charge, right, that we created against labor to the Austin's Center job. Okay, and if I go out of here and I go to the next one, same thing. It's another credit card charge, just a separate transaction. Right, so all of those are in there and it's allocated the different costs to the job. Of course, now this is running for all time and I can run it for just June and see that, but those costs are showing up in there now. The second report that we want to look at is we want to look at our profit and loss by job report. Okay, so we still have no revenues because we have not moved the estimates to be actuals in the invoicing section yet, so no revenues yet, but we do have jobs costing in here. Okay, so it's showing me all of the costs against the job, 84, 4,000, 10,000, total for Fourlane 10,000, Soccer City 9280. Okay, all of the costs are against the job. Total is 3180. Now this is looking at profit and loss by job. This is not looking at the profit and loss as a whole. So let's go ahead and look at the profit and loss as a whole and see what happens. Okay, so looking at the profit and loss as a whole, and we're going to go back a couple of months, right? So we include June. Now notice no income still, right? Because we haven't posted anything. We also have a $0 amount in direct labor. So why is that? Where did all those costs go that we just looked at? Well, those costs, all of those costs that we imported were allocated against a job, and then we also had an offset cost that was allocated against no job. Because what we're doing here, right, is we have a balance, right? Whatever the balance is for our actual direct labor is going to be posted from our payroll company. Okay? But with this transaction, what we were doing, or this set of transactions, what we were doing is we were doing a wash in the P&L and we were allocating some of the cost against the job, right? So I could actually have $60,000 in costs in my direct labor account right now, but I've allocated $31,000 of it against the jobs. Now the ultimate goal would be to get this allocation amount to be pretty darn close to your actual direct labor costs. Then you know that you're allocating pretty accurately, but sometimes that's difficult. But getting it within a material amount, right, plus or minus 5 to 10%, that's really good. You're doing a good job, right, in those allocations there. So it's a complete wash when it comes down to your total financials on the profit and loss. And of course, the real thing too is we want to go look at our credit card account. And notice here, the credit card account balance, the register is 0. Okay, so when I look at that, it's a complete wash here as well. Okay, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. Now, what I was mentioning before is that occasionally you may want to reconcile this account. So you just go in and reconcile the credit card. Anytime you reconcile a register that does not have a statement provided from an outside source, right? Somebody doesn't send you a statement that says, here's your job cost balance. No. Anytime you reconcile an account that doesn't have a statement, you reconcile it to 0. You can come in here, select mark all, and reconcile it so they all come off the list, right? Everything's cleared out in there. Now this balance should always be 0 if we're doing things correctly. Okay, just like we should always have a net 0 effect on the P&L. Again, when we looked at this was on a smaller scale. We didn't go into all of the what ifs and I wanted this and I want additional. So if you need any additional, you can see this is your base so that you can take it a step further when you're ready to. The other thing that I just wanted to bring up too is that I have had customers use multiple estimates tied to multiple jobs so they can get more in depth. Because here in our reporting, right, in our estimate versus actual as an example, we just have it at the summary level. Sometimes I've had people say, I want to know my estimate versus actual for electrical versus plumbing as an example. So when we think about, okay, well, what fields are generating that data? Okay, so the fields that are generating that data are the time cards, right? So use weekly timesheet. And the weekly timesheet, the fields that we can put on here, where's some data? There we go. The fields that we can put on here are the payroll items, right? And those payroll items aren't actually pointing to any GL account code, right? We have service items that can point to a different GL account code. So you could set up different service items in here that say like electrical management, etc. And then basically paste the payroll items into the service items area, but it gets a little bit more complicated. So anyway, ways you can play with it. You want to look at your timesheet and you want to say, okay, what fields are here that I could play with in order to get the details, right? So the other thing that's important, or the other way that I've had customers do this, is that they will set up multiple estimates, right? Because on this timesheet, not only are we looking at the payroll item that kind of segregates out the different tasks, we could set it up at the job level. So instead of saying Fourlane office building, it could say Fourlane electrical, Fourlane plumbing, and then that way it'll allocate out, right? When I export my committed cost by job report, it'll say how much committed costs we have to, or how much unpaid wages we have to electrical versus plumbing, and that'll allow me to allocate in to QuickBooks against those tasks on the job. But it takes a lot more management, of course, because you have multiple customer jobs, you have multiple estimates tied to the customer job, so it takes a little bit more management, but we can get there, right? So all of this is, of course, how to function inside of QuickBooks, what we're reviewing. One of the nicest parts about QuickBooks is that it does have an open SDK, fully open, not fully open, but the SDK is open to the public, so you can create reports on top of QuickBooks as opposed to running this data through QuickBooks if you want to. But this is a very good, helpful way for you to get stated costs built in to your job costing for labor.